Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for a special chat with Byron, where today we're going to be talking about emotions. Everyone has emotions, and today we're going to be kind of diving deep into what emotions are and what can we do about them. So, emotions are a fundamental aspect of everyone's human experience. I mean, I think that for those out there that do not experience emotion, then there's something else going on, and there's something that would need to be looked at by a trained professional. But the point is that emotions are very much a part of the fabric. It's a part of the essence. It's what it means to be a human being, is to have and experience emotion. So when you think about the idea of how emotions shape our lives. They absolutely are they're integral into um, how we experience ourselves, how we experience other people, how we experience events and incidences in our past. Very much are tied to how we, and again with those experiences, and how we remember them is going to be based upon many times how we, from our perspective and from our vantage point, what emotions were elicited in those moments, in those incidences. But no matter what, I think everyone can agree. And there may be absolutely some things that I share today that you won't agree with. But I'm not necessarily trying to get agreement. I'm trying to just simply provide value in the idea of that emotions are incredibly important, and they impact our lives in profound ways. So the idea of the emotions matter, it's absolutely critical for us to have a kind of in many ways, a philosophy of emotion, of having an understanding of what emotions are. And also I'll be sharing next month, I'll be sharing kind of a similar topic, but it's going to be on thoughts. And today, and the reason I'm doing this is because over the course of coaching for 20 plus years, emotions become a big part of the conversation when I'm working with clients. So it's really important for all of us to have a good working lexicon of vocabulary of what emotions are. Again, I said earlier, kind of like a philosophy of what emotions are for you, and how to navigate and how to understand, because we don't want to be a person that is just well, we certainly don't want to be a person that never experiences emotion. I mean, there's something else that's going on at a fundamental level that needs to be addressed. We also don't want to be the people that, when we experience emotion, we just simply stuff it. And so, whenever we experience a negative emotion, we stuff it and we deny it. And if that's the case, then denying those emotions, it's they will absolutely manifest themselves in other ways. So today I'm excited just to share just a kind of a high level of what emotions are and what we can do about them. So just to start off with, this whole idea of connection, and I really love this picture, this idea that emotions enable us to make those meaningful connections. And I know this is obviously a picture of an image of social media, using your phone and whatnot, but it's so much more than that. The idea of how emotions help us to make those meaningful connections, because the life that we all live is a life that is meant to be lived in community with other people, in connection with other people. So the idea of having this robust network of connections, emotions serve as kind of like the glue that binds these relationships together. Because when we experience both positive and negative emotions, it's both. It's not one or the other. It's both that help us and remind us that we need one another. That there are times when, obviously, with the negative emotions, that we might bother one another. But even with those negative emotions, there are ways to process those negative emotions so that that's not what you would experience all the time. Because there was something I was looking at earlier today, and I just want to pull it up so I can kind of share with you kind of this kind of notion. It's this. It says this. It says it's part of the divine and human wisdom to realize that feelings and emotions are central to our existence, and to make sure they're good emotions or good feelings. Now, I do use the word feelings and emotions as synonyms, as the same. Now, there are people out there that do not believe they're the same. Well, I'm one and for the course of this explanation today, if you hear me say feelings and if you hear me say emotions, I'm meaning the same thing. I'm not trying to differentiate one from the other at all. But the point is, it's part of the divine. And again, this is a quote, and I'll show you that this is a quote from, I believe it's from, it's from a book called Renovation of the Heart by Dallas Willard, and he was a professor of philosophy at University of Southern California. He said this. He said, it's part of the divine and human wisdom to realize that feelings, and I would also include emotions, are central to our existence, and to make sure that these are good feelings or emotions. And indeed, they can be strong and healthy ones. So the idea that we're going to have these strong emotions, strong feelings. We do not have to be victimized by destructive emotions or feelings. But I think what Dr. Willard is addressing is that there are times in our life when we may have suffered some sort of trauma, where we have these negative, destructive feelings that are tied to the event of our trauma. That is totally normal, and those would need to be processed. And I'll talk about kind of how to do that in a little bit later. But Dr. Willard continues. He says, even the feelings that harm us are, for the most part, not bad in themselves, but are somehow not properly limited or subordinated. They're out of order. Meaning that when we do have these feelings, many times the feelings, and sometimes the feelings are there to protect us, but they need to be properly limited and subordinated to, and I'm going to explain what that means, the subordination. There's kind of like a hierarchy that we can talk about, and I'll explain that in a minute as far as when I have this explanation of what the heart, H-E-A-R-T, heart is. Dr. Willard continues. He says, feelings or emotions are, with few exceptions, good servants. But he wants to make this distinction. He says, but they are disastrous masters. Meaning, we want to understand our emotions for sure, and we want to have this robust connection and network of people that we love and that love us without a doubt. But we don't want to live our lives in such a way that emotions, we kind of rule our life based upon emotions. Because if we and I don't believe it's possible to control our emotions. I think our emotions simply come. And sometimes I'm going to give you a visual here in a minute. Where I live, I don't live too far from the ocean. And when I taught my kids how to swim, I taught them how to swim in a pool. And then we went out to the ocean and I taught them how to swim in the ocean. Now, one of my children in particular, when we would talk about emotions, because we would talk about emotions being like a wave. And I'm going to explain what that means in a minute, because I'm going to have a graphic. I'm going to show you some pictures of waves. With every single wave, there's an apex. The wave goes to a certain height, and it's not going to go further than that. And then it almost always, there's a law. It's the energy moving through the medium of water. The wave will lower. It will dissipate. The energy will move through the water, and the wave will actually dissipate. It'll get lower. But when our emotions are out of order, or they haven't been subordinated, like what Dr. Willard was saying, we end up almost kind of like rolling in the froth of the foam of the surf. And I had one particular child that did that when they were younger. And it was really hard and painful to watch, because they experienced the emotion over and over and over again. And even today, we got a new dog about a year and a half ago, and our dog, his name is Mookie. And sure, I guess we named him after Mookie Betts, but Mookie Betts is a great player, baseball player for the Los Angeles Dodgers. But Mookie, whenever a significant person leaves the house, and significant people, really any of us, I don't leave the house as often as other people, but if my wife leaves, my daughter leaves, my son leaves, Mookie will he has like a perch by the front window, and he will wallow in the emotion of the loss he is feeling from the person that he loves that left the house. So he will howl, and then you'll think he's done howling, and then 10 minutes later you'll hear a whimper, and then you'll hear the howl just to start back up again. So the point I'm trying to make with this idea of human emotions are in many ways the glue that binds us together in these connections. They're absolutely to be experienced and to be relished and to be understood, and in many ways to be integrated, especially the ones that are the not so positive ones, the negative ones, and especially if they're connected to some sort of past event, maybe even a trauma. But when we have, like, for example, the person I was mentioning earlier, I'm going to make them private. I'm not going to reveal their gender or their name. A loved one of mine, but also my dog. And again, I'm sure you know someone too. They kind of roll in the surf of the wave, and what that means is that they again and again and again and again they re-feel the negative emotion, and they fixate instead of allowing the wave to go up and down. They move themselves into closer to the shore, closer to the beach, and then they fall down and then they roll in the surf, and they experience the negativity of that emotion. And if that's where you are, you absolutely need to stop and get up and realize that the emotion that you felt, and I'll tell you one quick story before we move on to the next slide. Years ago, I was a pastor. I'm still technically a pastor, but years ago, I was at a church. I was working, and it was on Sunday. And it's not uncommon for people to want to kind of talk to you after a service. And it was well after the service. And this is where my family's in the car. I see them in the car. They're all waiting for me because we're going to go to lunch, right? And this lady comes up to me, and she sees my family in the car. She sees me standing there, and she wants to talk to me. And she says something like, you could just tell she was really, really, really upset. And I don't know what she was upset about. I didn't really even know her very well. But she looked at me and she said, she told me something about what was going on. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." And then because I showed a little bit of emotional compassion, empathy, I was just said, "I'm sorry about that." And then she told me, she said, "Well, don't give me sympathy because I'm gonna lose it." She was kind of threatening that she was going to melt down and lose it. I said, "Okay." And she said, she didn't expect me to say okay, because she said, "I'm going to lose it." And I said, "Okay, it's okay. Go ahead and lose it." Because when we lose it, it's not for forever. Our emotions can take control for a time. Again, the wave, it will apex unless you get tripped up in the surf and you roll around. And that's totally different. But if that's the case, there's something else going on. There's a lot of, it's out of order, it's immaturity. But this person wasn't immature, but she said she was going to lose it. I said, "Okay, go ahead." And then she did. And then the emotion, it reached its apex, and then it slowly came back down to normal. The only bad thing about the story is that my family was still in the car waiting. But 10 minutes later, she was able to kind of collect herself, and we were able to have a little bit of a conversation. And we ended up talked about this, maybe that next week. But the point I'm trying to make is that emotions are absolutely, without emotions, we're not going to have those connections. So it's important for us to have emotions that we understand, that if they're connected to an event, that they become a part of our story, but they don't necessarily rule us. R-U-L-E, rule us. I have some past incidences in my life that when I went through therapy, my therapist got these big, gigantic eyes because he was super, super excited, because they were literally tens out of tens as far as like trauma and like things he was really excited to process. But today I'm not going to share any of those, but if I did, I wouldn't experience the same level of emotion when I was first sharing those with him, because I have worked through those, and those emotions, those memories are a part of me. I don't deny those memories at all. They were very hard, but I don't have, it's not emotionally charged anymore, if that makes any sense. So emotions are critically important, and they are the glue that kind of keep us connected. And it's also really important that we understand our emotions, because emotions help us to understand ourselves better, especially when we're willing to do the work of understanding, because emotions act as valuable signals, and they offer insights into the inner workings, and they guide us in our decision-making process. So with this is, I've done a lot of this work for myself, because I've had some of those, those past incidences that were 10s out of 10, right? Where the therapist got really super excited. I wanted to understand where, and he described the emotions that I was experiencing. And I'll get to a diagram in a minute where I'm going to talk about this in more detail as far as the emotional part. But when you have unresolved past incidences, they can almost act as if they're pushing like pressure, like a hydraulic pressure, and it's internal. And if you don't understand what's going on, you don't know what you don't know. And as a result of that, you can have this intermittent leakage. And that's what was happening to me, even in a professional setting. I was leaking. And that leakage, that was emotion. And if any of you who know who I am, I'm very intense. And the intensity, coupled with probably a negative emotion, that was not a pleasant experience for others. So I had to work very, very hard to understand what was going on, what were the dynamics involved. Because when we do not understand the inner workings of our decision-making process and how that actually has an impact, how emotions have an impact on how we make decisions, because we're not understanding them, that can completely derail how we are able to navigate in our lives. So it's really important that we acknowledge and we examine, and not in like a navel gazing way, but we need to be able to, and I'm navel, N-A-V-E-L, navel gazing, not where we're just simply fixated on ourselves, but we need to understand our emotions, because when we do understand our emotions, we gain a deeper understanding of our world, of ourself, of our life, of our story, of our values, of our fears, of our aspirations, of the things that we want to do. Because this self-awareness and this others awareness, because it's other people that were experiencing this leakage that I was placing upon them or having them experience because they were in my physical presence. They had nothing to do with what happened to me when I was younger, zero. But they were experiencing that hydraulic pressure because I had not yet worked through some of those, I had not worked through understanding what had happened. So this self-awareness and this others awareness forms the foundation. It's what I believe, the foundation of personal growth, of why you want to grow and how you can grow. Because personal growth, it empowers us to make conscious choices that can become aligned with our true selves, our authentic selves. And that can help us pursue a more meaningful life. So that's what I mean by understanding. It's certainly not ignoring the emotion. And it's also not, what I call spelunking. The word spelunking is a really interesting word. It simply means to go exploring inside of a cave. I don't believe spelunking into your emotions is actually a good idea. But when they happen, and they happen all the time, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to ignore them or to do something about them or try to understand them. And that's what I'm suggesting, is that you try to understand what's going on. When you spelunk, you're looking for trouble. And again, I'm sure people out there are some people may not agree with me, but I'm not a spelunker. I have spelunked in a cave, but I would not, and I have not spelunked in my own soul. So understanding is really, that is the work. It's the work to understand, and in many ways to connect that head to the heart. And I'll talk about the heart in a second. And then well-being. Ignoring or suppressing emotions. So you can ignore them, you can suppress them, you can stuff them. It's like you're a kangaroo and you have this pouch and you take all the negative emotions. You simply ignore anything negative and you put them in your pouch. That's not good, because that can be detrimental. Well, it's absolutely detrimental. The detrimental effects, they end up becoming mental and physical, because that the chronic stress, the cortisol that you experience, and I'm very, very familiar with cortisol, which is really super important, neurotransmitter, chemical for repairing bones. But if you're not repairing bones, and if you have a lot of cortisol, it is it creates a lot of anxiety, and also potentially a lot of potential depression. And all of these are connected because they stem from unresolved and unintegrated emotions. Believe it or not, that's where a lot of our physical maladies can come from. Also, some of our emotional maladies can come from that. However, by embracing and understanding and integrating our emotions and learning healthy ways of understanding, of integrating, of coping, they call them coping mechanisms. Like, for example, something like maybe prayer, meditation, breathing, maybe exercise, maybe learning how to communicate more effectively with those that you love so that you're not attacking them. And maybe you have a way of reframing. When you hear them say something, you're able to reframe it, or you say it back to them so they understand what you're saying. But you're communicating to understand, but also to connect. That can be a really effective way to reduce stress, because, again, the very first point was we're in this together. There's a connection. We're not intended to live this life on our own. And by doing that, by integrating the emotion and by working through all that, that ends up reducing stress, and it promotes that overall well-being. And we can have that. And even, obviously the family unit is probably the most important, but we can even have that at work. But ultimately, I believe that it's possible for us to thrive, because emotions, they allow us to, the emotions and understanding, the integrating the emotions actually provide almost like a fuel for the possibility for all of us to experience this thing called resilience, that we can be resilient people. We can bounce back. And resilience is it is in the face of trauma. It's in the face of adversity. And we all know people who've experienced a trauma or an adversity or a setback. And some of these are significant, and these become a shaper of their life. And it could have destroyed their life. But that's really where the human spirit, the human heart, and I'm going to talk about the human heart in a second. And I'm not talking about the heart, the actual muscle. I'm talking about, the center of the human, of being a human being. When we embrace our emotions, both positive and negative, we equip ourselves with tools to navigate life's challenges. And we're able to do this navigation with this sense of dignity, honor, respect, grace, and resiliency, that we can bounce back, that we're not fragile. And I just want to make a point of that. And maybe that could become another special topic for Chat with Byron. We are not fragile. We are non-fragile creatures. We can handle a lot, and we've handled a lot. So by acknowledging our emotions, understanding them, integrating them, we can tap into our inner strength, because we end up knowing more about ourselves, what our capabilities are, what our capacities are, how we are able to adapt. And this is a really important word, how we can be resourceful. Because ultimately, we're all trying to, in some way or the other, we're trying to get what we want and get what we need. And that's being resourceful. It's not being selfish. It's being resourceful. And emotions are a part of that. And understanding our emotions are a part of that. So they allow us to, by understanding, integrating, and with what Dr. Wheeler would talk about, the idea of ordering them, like in a sense of order or organization, or organizing them. They allow us to bounce back from setbacks, because we are non-fragile, because we learn from our experiences, and ultimately we can see it's possible. And it not only possible, it's reality that we can thrive even in difficult circumstances, that we can do hard things. It was funny. My family, I have 3 adult children, and as a family, we've been watching Survivor since my kids are. I think my kids were born like right as Survivor was starting, so we watched Survivor as a family. And this last fall, there was this one particular character, and you could tell she had some sort of like, she was either trained as a social worker or maybe even a little psychology. She said, "We can do hard things. I can do hard things." And she was just kind of saying that to herself over and over and over again. But what she said is very, very true. I didn't really particularly like her character, but it's true. We can do hard things. You can do hard things. And we do hard things every single day. But by embracing our emotions, it empowers us to live a more authentic and a more fully engaged life. We're not comfortably numb from drugs or alcohol. That we're embracing the highs, we're embracing the lows of what it means to be a human being, and we're doing this with others as we're kind of walking in this journey together. So I'm going to share a little bit about this idea of a wave. So the wave is an important concept. The wave is obviously when you think about when the energy is moving through the water, and it can start literally thousands of miles away from the shore. But the point is that the wave has this idea of there is an apex to the wave. And by the way, these are 4 different pictures, just so I know it might be a little confusing, but these are 4 different pictures. I always want to kind of illustrate those different points. The energy moves through the water, so it creates the wave. So these people out here that are about ready to experience the energy as it moves through the water in the form of a wave right here, what ends up happening is that wave will absolutely overtake them. But if their feet are on the sand right now, and maybe they have their shoulders out of the water, when that water comes, when the energy through the water comes as a wave, it will momentarily overtake them, without a doubt. It will overtake them, and that's okay. That's the emotion. The emotion can be overwhelming, and that's really what, in some ways, that's what it means to feel overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed, and in this example, you're overwhelmed by the water. But if you just stick with it, the wave has a pattern, and it will reach a certain apex, a certain height, and then it will diminish. It will lessen. It will go down. But if you freak out and you kind of get tumbled into the surf, and that's what I was saying earlier, this idea of being kind of rolled around in the surf, or rolled around in this kind of like this foamy water, that is a different kind of situation. That's where you just need to simply stand up and understand that the emotion, it will lessen if you let it, allow it. So if you stand your ground, you will experience the emotion. It will take you off the earth. You won't have the ability to feel the sand anymore on your feet or your toes. So that's gone. And that is absolutely, utterly, and for a child, that's like terrifying. And for us, it's unsettling. Even for those who are, just like, especially if the water's cold, it can take your breath away. But there are laws, and there is a law of that energy moving through the wave, where that wave will absolutely dissipate. It will get lower and lesser, and you'll be able to reconnect to the earth. And that emotion, you'll still be experiencing it, but it's now going to be in the past. And then you have to be ready for the next emotion, because the emotions are going to come, especially if you've lost someone. I mean, I remember losing my dad and then losing my mom. So both my parents are passed away, and I literally think of them every single day. I mean, not all day, but in a moment, I almost guarantee you there's not a moment in a day that I've lived since both my mom and my dad have passed away that I haven't thought of them. And as it gets further and further away from the point of the day of their death, the energy that's in that wave, the emotion that's in that emotion, the energy in that emotion is less and less. That's just time. So my encouragement is just understand that emotions are very much like a wave, and they do have an apex, and they will lessen. You just need to stick with it. So here's the heart. Those with a well-kept heart are persons who are prepared for and capable of responding to the situations of life in ways that are good and right. So the premise here is with a heart that is prepared and using Dallas Willard's words, organized and ordered, an organized heart. And the heart is the nexus, the connecting point of the mind, emotion, and the will. And we're going to talk about each one. We're not going to talk a lot about the mind and the will. We're just going to talk a little bit about, because today's really about emotion. But the heart is the connecting point. And I believe all human beings, this is my view of the non-physical nature of what it means to be a person. And I would think that the heart is the center. It's the connecting of our mind, which is also our intellect, our will, which is where we make decisions, and our affect, desires, or emotions. So that I believe that heart is that's the heart. Like we think about the heart of the matter, or the heart of a person. That's what I'm talking about. So when we think about like, let's just talk about the mind and the will just first. The mind is really, in many ways, it's our intellect. It's the ultimate freedom we have as human beings, is the power to select what we will allow or require our minds to dwell upon. So the notion of our mind, in many ways, our mind is what we choose to focus on, that we allow. In many ways, our mind is like it's where our intellect is, where our intelligence is, and it's what we can fill. Our mind is something we can fill. We can fill it with good information or poor information. But our mind and how our mind impacts our heart, because there's a heart part of our mind, there's a heart part of our will, there's a heart part of our emotion. But how our heart is impacted by our mind is by what is going inside of our mind. And that could be images, that could be, obviously words, it could be music, it could be anything. But it's really the place where we're allowed to select what we will focus our mind upon. That's our mind. Our will is a place of choice. It's a place of volition. It's a place that when we exercise our will, we're choosing. It's really when we make a choice, we're exercising, like instead of exercising a muscle, when we're choosing, we're exercising our will. And that's the capacity of a person to originate things or events that would not otherwise have happened. And it's the executive center of the human self, the will is. Not the heart, but the heart part of the will, the center of the center. That's the executive center of the will. The will is what makes those choices. The will makes the choice. The will makes the choice with the things the mind has focused on. And the emotion is we don't have a lot of control over this. I'm just going to read this. Interestingly, you can't evoke thoughts by feeling a certain way, but you can evoke and to some degree control feelings by directing your thoughts. Our power over our thoughts is of great and indispensable assistance in directing and controlling our feelings, our emotions. We cannot just choose our feelings. Our feelings is simply, and I would say in many ways, our thoughts are like that too. And I'm going to talk about that next month, because both our thoughts and our feelings can kind of come out of left field. And next time I want to show you kind of a technique of what we can do because when we have thoughts that are kind of reeling, R-E-E-L-I-N-G, reeling, where they're kind of just, they're nonstop. They're kind of frantic and frenetic. Then we need to have a strategy on how we can slow our thoughts down. Because as you can imagine, when we have those kinds of thoughts, that produces a lot of anxiety. But emotions, and similar to what I said earlier, when your emotions are kind of out of control, you're kind of in that foam. And we have like a panic attack or an anxiety attack. That's where you are. You're actually in the foam, because that's all you're feeling, is that you're feeling that negative emotion over and over and over again. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about a tool of what to do with our emotions. So I'm going to kind of separate surface emotions, surface feelings from deeper emotions, deeper feelings, because they're not the same. What you experience more often than not are these surface feelings. Like on the surface of the water, there's a disturbance, and you might feel anger. Now, you could take a picture of this slide, and you could do the work, because this is the work. I mean, this is the work that I was taught years and years ago. And whenever I would feel anger, I would go through, why am I feeling anger? Because there's always a connection. There's always a tether. There's always like a string. There's always something connected from the deep to the surface. So if you're feeling anger, you might be feeling something like hurt. Or this is not supposed to be an exhaustive list. Or you might be feeling loss or grief. Or you might be feeling helpless. If you're feeling helpless, you're going to feel anger. And the job is, or the work, not the job, the work is to, whenever you're experiencing those surface emotions, just take a minute and ask yourself, where is this coming from? Not what incident, what emotion are you experiencing? And the cool thing about this wheel, this feelings wheel, it actually gives us a very clear idea, because these are all these are surface emotions. So if you're feeling angry, let's say that I'm feeling mad, and then maybe you're feeling furious or jealous. So in just today, what I want to encourage you to do is just make the connections. Not necessarily do anything about it, but just make the connections. So connect the surface emotion to something deeper and see what happens. And then let me know, reach out to me. Because this is the work, when you do that kind of work, that in and of itself is an integrating activity, because it helps you organize, again, Dallas Willard's words, organize and order your emotions, your heart, where it's going to be more in line. Even just this simple act of identifying and connecting a deeper feeling, deeper emotion to a surface feeling emotion. And you can have a surface emotion that's also positive. So you think about, say you feel really, really happy. And then you're feeling optimistic. And the reason why you feel optimistic is because you feel hopeful, like things are going to work out. That in and of itself is an integrating act and work. And that can be very, very helpful. And I hope that makes sense. So I'm not trying to make this more difficult than it needs to be. Just connect the deeper feelings to the surface feelings and vice versa, because there's always a tether. There's always a connection. And that will help you order and organize how you feel. This is not about, again, the idea of going spelunking. You're not looking for emotions. Emotions are going to come. They're going to come out of left field. And when you have them, you might experience a deeper feeling first, maybe, but more often than not, you're going to feel a surface feeling first. Just feel it. Don't ignore it. Allow the wave to come. You experience that guilt, anger, anxiety, boredom, whatever. And here's another list here. It could be surprise, bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad. And when you experience those surface emotions, just connect to something a little deeper. Surprise. Okay, you feel confused, and you feel confused because you feel a little, disillusioned, and maybe it's a little discouraged. So all you're doing is connecting the deeper to the surface and the surface to the deeper. And that in and of itself it's answer to the question, what to do with our emotions. What can we do? What action can we do that could actually be helpful to us? And that's what I'm suggesting, that this is something I've been doing and helping people with for, 20 years. So this is something that's worked for me, and I know it's worked for other people. And you can find this feelings wheel online. This is not something I've made. And you might even have a better tool. If you do, and you want to share it, I would love to see it. Last thing is this. It would be good to have, again, these are anger, sadness, fear, shame. These are kind of the four main characters of the emotional disturbance. And this is also something really cool. It's called the SUD scale. And my therapist taught me this. So whenever I was feeling something, I love, there's a in the Myers-Briggs, there's 4 letters, and I am an INTJ. No, I'm an INFJ. INFJ. I'm an introvert, intuitive, feeling, judging. So there's a part of me, the judging part. I love to rank things. I love to kind of categorize things. I love to judge things. That's what the J stands for. So he would ask me to kind of rate on a scale of 0 to 10 how strong that emotion was. And again, when I said 10 out of 10, this is where that came from. The past incidences of my life. When I saw his eyes get really big with excitement, it's like, yeah, that's a 10 out of 10. And we're gonna uncover that. And when I was first experiencing that emotion, it was a 10. And later on, it became like a 0. It was still a part of my story, but that's what and I mean, you could look up what SUDs mean, but the SUD scale is that it gives you the ability to kind of rate how strong the emotion is. And when you look at the feelings chart of anger, which could be agitated all the way to mad, this gives you just more language, more nomenclature, more verbiage in order for you to understand, to attribute words to how you feel. That's all these are. That's all this is supposed to be, is just a resource. The heart is not supposed to be an exhaustive list. The exercise is to connect the surface to the deep and the deeper to the surface. That's the point. This is not going to be, you could probably create another, who knows how many different wheels that would do the same kind of idea of going from the surface to the deep. So I would encourage you not to get caught up on what words are here, what words are not here, or even the fact that they've basically said there's 4 main categories. There might be more. I don't know. That doesn't really matter to me. I'm just trying to share a tool. But what the SUD scale was really helpful to me, because it gave me a way of kind of ranking, stacking, organizing, judging, assessing how my emotions, how strong they were, because not all emotions are the same. So this, I think, that's really what I wanted to share today, is the emotions they're super, super important. And it does take time to work and to integrate them, to understand them. But once we do, it would be like going from black and white, like the old days, the old black and white TV, to now we have this, 4K, 8K picture, and then to real life, where everything is, it's multi-dimensional. When you're not experiencing emotion, that's like black and white TV. And when you start to feel emotion, experience emotion, and start to connect, the fact that you're not denying emotion, that's kind of like the 4K or the 8K TV. It's incredible. It's a great experience. But when you're able to do the work, you kind of pop out of the TV and all of a sudden you're in life. And it can be messy. But with these kind of tools that I've shown you today, I have a lot of really hard, difficult conversations, a lot. This gives you the tools to equip yourself so you're able to have some really, really difficult conversations, and you're able to understand and navigate those emotions that you feel, and also the emotions that the other person feels, which is pretty amazing. This is me, the things I love, my family. This is the predictive index. I'm a venture. I love this assessment. I don't necessarily love all assessments, but I do use a multiple of assessments. This is a cool movie. It's called The Razor's Edge by Jim Murray. This is one of his early serious movies. Really, really great movie. Avatar. Not a really big fan of Avatar, but I like what they say to each other in the Na'vi. Whenever they would encounter another of those gigantic blue hominoids, or biped hominoids, or whatever they are, on the moon of Pandora, they would say, I see you. And that, in many ways, that's kind of what we're doing when we're recognizing the emotion, our own emotions and emotions of others, is we're recognizing the humanity in the other person, that we see them. Anyway, you can see this, the other things I love. I would encourage you, if you are so inclined, to go to byronlowe.com/join. You can join our 1% Better community. You can take the 10-day challenge, and there's all other things you can do. You can reach out to me. I'd love to have a chance to talk with you. So hopefully you've enjoyed today. And I didn't know if I was going to go an hour. I knew it was going to go more than 30 minutes. So emotions absolutely matter. And hopefully you've enjoyed today and the little deeper dive that we went into emotions. And if you have any questions or you want to reach out to me, please feel free to, you can take the assessment, or you can go to my website. But I really loved the fact that having the chance to share this today. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you on Thursday with Helping Managers Win with Tom Rosenack and I, and also on Friday I'll do another chat with Byron. You take care.